an app or a solution that contains either or both of them, and have it documented. And documenting means then basically take whatever's in there and try to make some sense out of it so that you've got some technical documentation. For Flow, for example, again, what kind of actions are in there, how are they set up, etc. For an app, then again, how many screens are there, what controls are on those screens, what do those, what kind of properties do those controls have, and what do they do, etc. It's a work in progress, and hope that obviously over time then I can improve it more and more. Started with the Flow part, added the app part end of last year, and just published an update just earlier today, because there were some things that I just want to get pushed out soon. So how does it work? So I'm going to show both of them. First of all, I'm just going to quickly, while I'm talking, also open two examples. First of all, for example, where's the loading here? Just to give you an example, I've got here a flow that I've been using to just automate a process that I have with publishing some links to Twitter and LinkedIn. So it's nothing complicated. You can see here a couple of actions. There are a few things that I'm doing, and then there, initializing some variables. I've got some conditions in here where I'm doing stuff, and down here, basically, you can see I've got again a condition, yes, no, another condition, doing stuff. And you can see, it's still manageable. So it's getting a bit bigger, a little bit more complicated, but not too much yet. But then again, obviously, from my point of view, I did something very nice here. I have a local copy of that flow, but if I now need to figure out after, I don't know, when I did that 2 years or so, when I need to figure out, hey, this flow that I developed 2 years ago, how did I set it up again? If I want to make a change again, how do things work, etc. I can try to sit here and dive in or so, or I can try to, for example, do some separate kind of documentation and refer to that. Same thing for an app. So if I go over here, so you can see I've got a small, cute app that I developed for my daughter, actually, so that she can, that was also around 2 years ago, so that she can start doing some math. That's when she's just started primary school, and I just wanted her to basically start doing some simple math. So just a very quick demo. As you can see, 9 plus how much equals 10. So she has to select the right number. 4 plus how much equals 10. Those kind of things. And nothing too fancy, obviously, but the idea is, again, hey, over time that actually also improved. It started with, trying to remember, with, 2 different screens that do the same thing, but then I also added more screens over time. So, for example, I wanted her to get used to using coins. So figuring out, oh, if something costs $1.70 and I have to give the exact amount, what does that translate into? So actually go and do something like this, and to do it right, 120. Obviously, I'm not even doing it right myself. Yeah, something like that. So you can see a relatively simple app as well. There are not too many screens, not too many controls. But again, basically, there's something happening in the backend with, for example, once I click on, let me just go in again here, for example. No. Okay, I broke it by now. But yeah, once I click, for example, one of those, you can see at the bottom something's moving, and there are some variables in use, etc., etc. So ideally, I want to get it documented. So if I want to make some updates, I can easily then just refer to the documentation. So that's basically the personal need, how things start. And obviously, from an enterprise perspective, there's the idea that, yes, you develop a complex app or flow, you want to have some kind of documentation. So you can see, for example, what kind of variables are in use, where are they used, what kind of collections are there. Same thing for flow, then you just want to have everything documented somewhere. And documentation is obviously not something that you can just automatically generate directly and everything's perfect. There's obviously a certain amount of manual activity usually required as well. For example, who created that flow, who's the owner of the flow, so the business owner, is there a support team, maybe provide a description, etc. Those are things that we don't know. So the purpose of my PowerDoku tool was simply said, then take whatever is there from a technical point of view, so all the definitions and such, and put it into appropriate documentation. To do that, basically what you have to do is you export your app or your flow. So I'm not going to do that right now, but the idea is then I can then say, folks, I want to export this flow here as a zip package. Same form on Power App, I can export that. Potentially, I even have a solution that I have with maybe one or more apps or one or more flows. So same thing, I export that. There's some components in there. And then basically I run here my PowerDoku GUI. What I have here is a very simple way then to take my flow or app or solution and then get it documented. So optionally, I can select a Word template. So if I want to use a standard template to be used, then so that I know corporate branding is in there, etc., I could do that. But to keep things simple now, I'm just going to use the standard blank Word template right now. I'm just going to say I want to select an app flow solution to document. And down here, for example, I already, as you can see, I've got a couple of apps that I'm using for testing. If I take now, for example, the PonyMath app that I have, that's the one that I just demoed, I can just simply say I want to open it, and it's starting to parse it, process it, create the Word documentation, and it's done. So if I now go into the folder where I've got my PonyMath app here, you can see here, I've got here my, a new folder has been generated as well, AppDoc PonyMath, where the corresponding, let me just do a minor cleanup. Those were documents I had earlier. The corresponding documentation has been here created. So latest update I just published today for Word for apps actually includes two different sets of documentation. One is the high-level overview, one is more detailed, and I'm just going to quickly open them to show you what's in there. So the overview document, let me just go in a bit more, just contains then the general information. What's the name of the app? When was the documentation generated? Then some general information about the app properties again. So you can see, for example, background color, what kind of app type is it? Is it phone or tablet? Some other general information here. Next thing is then, what's quite interesting is then, for example, variables and collections. So we know that there are 9 variables and 2 collections available. And it's not perfect actually here in terms of where do those variables get used, because obviously it's not easy to track something like that within the code that's available. So I'm trying to figure that out as much as possible, but it's not always perfectly possible. That's just a coding issue, you could say, trying to figure out how things are getting used. But at least we know, for example, the variable called avatar is used for the control image for and on the property on select. So I know, hey, if I want to, again, check what does this avatar variable, where is it getting used, etc. I know, for example, it's exactly for these properties here. So I need to see there's a couple of locations, and I see, you know, for example, here I've got another variable called selected number that's been used quite a lot on different buttons here. And the more I think about, maybe I should even define on the control is listed here, but I'm not even sure on which screen. So talking about gives me a new idea to improve it. Either way, so you can see basically there's a lot of details. So I can figure out, hey, my variables, where are they in use? Or it could even be blank, meaning, hey, I've got a variable defined, but there's nothing defined where it's getting used, so I could even clear it up, etc. Same for collections, so I know what collections there are, and I can see where they're getting used. For example, my payment coins collection is used on a couple of different controls here. So I can see, for example, oh, when the coin screen becomes visible here, then yeah, something happens with that collection. I don't know anything else about this collection here right now, but at least I know where it's getting used. Scrolling down, some information about the data sources that I use. That's relatively high-level details that we have here right now. I just want to see what I'm connecting to. In my PonyMath app, I'm not connecting to anything else outside. So as you can see, basically, just some standard sample data that I kept in there, and then obviously my 2 collections, but no external data sources. But usually we would then also see any other external data sources if we had any. Next, resources. You can see I also added any resources that are listed in the file. So a lot of images that we can see here. So that helps also figure out, hey, what's actually in there. And lastly, here in that overview document, I've got here an overview of the 5 screens that are in the app. So details of my screen, for example, here my coin screen, showing here then again the different controls and how they are related. So I can see, for example, there's a gallery available, there's some images shown, and so on and so on. So we can see basically all the details. That's the overview document. The detailed document is quite similar, but contains a lot more information. So if I Open this here, you can see there's a lot more, there are a lot more properties that I'm listing here. So the overview document focuses on the key things. The detailed document just gives you everything, which also means you can see it's still working on opening it. I'm now here on page 2 of 104, whereas the other overview document had 16 pages. Quite a big difference, but we see something similar again. What I have here is also some information about the data sources, so a bit more details. For example, I can see now for my custom gallery sample data source, there's a bit of data listed here as well as an example. Scrolling down here, for example, here are my screens, and here we get then to a detailed list of my controls. So I can see now, for example, hey, answer list is a control of type list box. And I can see every single property that this control has and basically the value of it. So I can see, for example, color properties here. It's got that blue border, it's got using black color, and there's some gray, etc., etc. So I can easily then, for example, figure out also if I want to say, hey, I want to see I replaced the color recently. Maybe I didn't replace it everywhere. I can easily then, for example, zoom out and hopefully not make my work crash. Yeah, but yeah, you can see now, for example, yeah, oh, here's my purple getting used, etc., etc. So I can see that easily, or I can jump in. So if I want to see, for example, where else does, for example, this color get used, I can quickly figure it out, find it directly here in the documentation. So it's not just getting things documented, but you can then easily refer to the documentation and see, hey, if somebody says, oh, this blue is not the corporate blue, we need to change it to a slightly different hue of blue or so, then I can figure out which blues are currently where in use and then do the replacement in the app, etc. That's now for apps. Now, if I do the same thing actually for Flow, I've got my Flow also ready to be progressed. Actually, I don't have it here right now. Then I'm just going to use another flow, which is a standard, let's not call it a standard flow, which is a template flow from Microsoft, full weather, which basically just provides you with some details about upcoming event calendar events and the weather and the hotel booking and stuff. I used that flow simply because it's using a couple of connections, and you can see basically did a few things here. So I'm gonna just jump over to the other directories. I'm going to go to my workflows. Here's my generated new folder. And here you can see it did not just generate a Word document, but also actually 2 PNGs and 2 SVGs. So basically what I do is I generate, if I just go back to my flow here and edit it so I can see it. So we've got here, for example, this, this basically the flow chart, you could say, the actions, in which order are they, etc., what's happening in here. I'm doing actually more or less the same thing. So here I've got the overview, so I can see here recurrence, flight, or initialize, do stuff, apply to each, check if any event found. That's basically all the same thing that we can then see. Let me just see if I've got that. Yeah, not this one, not the simplified. Email me this one, that's the right one. So you can see here recurrence, initialize the variables, get calendar events, do an apply to each, and check if any event found. So you can see basically there are things happening here, and it's actually then the same thing that I'm doing here, just so that I've got basically something else easily that I could now refer to outside of the flow. Plus, I've just realized I missed one very nice part, but I'm not going to show that due to the lack of time. Basically, what we can see here is I've got here my, again, the chart here showing me again all my different actions, showing me, for example, oh, the apply to each is grouped here. Inside the apply to each, I've got this check if it's flight, and I've got the check if location is empty, which I can easily then see here as well. As you can see, what I actually also have, what I can't show in the demo right now because I didn't do that right away, is, for example, these icons here, that get current weather icon or here variable icon, those kind of things. You can actually also include them in your generated charts and documentation. So if I just take this image here that I have just to show you here. So you can see here, for example, here's the get calendar view of events. You can see here, here's the Outlook icon, for example. So just making it a bit look nicer. Anyway, coming back quickly to what I just did. So we have the high level overview, which is really just top level actions, but then also I've got a detail view which contains everything. If you want to see a more complex example, a friend of mine has a very large complex approval flow. I'm just going to run that as well. That usually takes around 30 seconds, I think, to process. So while it's running, I'm just going to quickly also show you again the PNG again. That's just exactly the same as the SVG, just converted to PNG. So I can take that image and put it somewhere else. And opening quickly the Word document that was generated is a bit similar to what we have for the app, basically just some general information. As you can see here, I embed the generated image, the flow, the chart basically. And then down here, I list in all the details that are relevant. So I'm listing all the connections that are getting used in my flows. I know it's the Outlook connector, the weather connector, and the users. I can see the variables that I use here and where they are getting used in these actions. So I know, for example, my variable calendar events, for example, is getting used in specific actions. Can also be quite helpful if you're trying to figure out, hey, I've got a variable defined and it's used in a lot of places in my workflow, but I'm not quite sure where. You can basically generate the documentation, then see, okay, that's where it's actually in use. And then basically just documenting the trigger, all the actions, basically for each action, it's quite technical, as you can see. So what does it do, roughly speaking? What kind of type is that action? Here we've got a compose, over here we've got an if. And yeah, providing a lot of details here. A lot of it is then maybe something you might not need, but often is good to refer to them. All right, so that's basically what is getting done here. And we can see here, okay, I've got the other one is now done. So see here, it took around 19 seconds to generate this separate flow documentation over here. Let me just quickly jump in here just to show you this is a very detailed flow. And you can imagine, yeah, there's quite a lot of data and not quite a lot of actions in here. As you can see, there's quite a lot of things happening. There are a lot of variables, etc. So it's good to have something like documented. Obviously, this kind of documentation, what we see here is not very user-friendly, but it showcases at least, hey, you've got this huge flow for approvals. And if you want to figure out, for example, hey, where's a certain, I'm trying to open the Word right now, where's a certain variable used or so, it will be nearly impossible to figure it out without having something documented. So for example, here you can see that's going to probably load for quite some time until it's done with all the pages. But if I scroll down, for example, I can see then, yes, here are all my variables, and it tells me again, yeah, where are they used? So I can easily then go to that specific page, etc., and have a look at it. I can then also jump to each of the actions if required, but I think my Word's now still preparing things. Just try to scroll down. And you can see, yeah, it's getting a bit better. I'm curious what happens when I try to click on the last one. Usually it takes some time to, yeah, go through details. So you can see I'm already at page 80 right now for my flow, and Word is now not responding anymore. That's the drawback, obviously, when you've got a very large flow. Even if you try to document something, the document is not too large in size, but obviously very large in pages. So takes a while until Word is has it open and can do something with it. All right, that was just a very quick demo of things. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yes, the tool is available online. I try to update it regularly. Took a short, 2-month break basically from things, or not 2 months, close to 2 months basically. But now started to introduce some updates again. If there's anything where you say, "Wow, it's looking not bad," but there are certain things that could be improved or should be added, or anything you want to basically think, contribute in any way, either by saying, yes, something can be done better or something's missing. Happy to listen to any. Feel free to add any issue or discussion just to provide more feedback on what's missing, what could be done. My goal is still to regularly work on it, improve the tool, but I'm basically getting to a point where we can then see, it's working for most of the time for most of the people. All right, so that's it now from my side. Now I just want to check for the other two organizers. If they're actually around.
Can I have one question?
Yeah, sure.
How this tool is dealing with the solution and the child flows?
Yeah. Actually, let me just share that. So I've got a partial answer for that. Because from my point of view, I'm working with a limited set of data, meaning then obviously, or still limited set of solutions, meaning, as you can see, I've got a range of apps, for example, a range of flows that I'm using to test. But obviously it's not, you could say, it might not always cover everything. So if you, for example, run it against something that you have and it fails or it misses something, I would gladly hear about it. The goal is to cover it as much as possible, but I'm not right sure basically if everything gets done completely right now in terms of does everything get documented. For example, child flows, I think it should get done, but there may be a lot of ways to improve it, etc. Just to show you something, for example, for the COE, I've got here some older components of the Power App COE available that's coming from Microsoft. So what we have here is actually, for example, the core. Actually, I'm going to run it against the audit components because it's going to take some time. But basically, what I have here is basically that solution here, exported solution that contains a couple of apps, couple of flows. And if I run it now against this solution here, what it does, basically it checks first for all the different workflows that it can find in there, and then creates documentation for each of those flows. And depending on how many there are and how complex they are, that might just take a short while. You can see it's now not doing anything right now because it's still busy documenting something here. While that's running, I'm just going to go over here just to show you. It actually creates then a folder called solution with the name of the solution. And then inside here, I've then got individual folders for each of the flows, basically. So I can easily run it against a complete, well. All right, perfect. I broke something, so I need to fix it again.
Sorry for that.
Thanks for letting me test this. And it's always good to know that something doesn't quite work with something that worked before. Okay, that's something I need to look at separately. But the idea is, as you can see, yeah, it documented basically all the flows. It started to document the apps and failed for one of those then basically. But you can see, yeah, I could now jump in and look at the documentation for this specific app or for a specific flow. But when it now comes to, for example, a flow might, again, when you've got a setup with child flows, etc., I didn't really think that through yet, so I'm not even quite sure how it looks like right now when you try to document it. And there might be ways to improve it as well then. You see basically my version number is right now 0.8. So I'm getting close to getting something where I'm saying, yes, I'm happy with it and it's working basically, but right now I'm still considering it to be a work in progress and with the potential for further improvements.
Yeah, it is really awesome. It is great that I had the chance to see that. It is great job. And definitely I will try test it because I had like a similar case that there was a huge approval and I just, chunked that into pieces like a modular flows. And that was like my first spot. So I will try it out and we are connected. So I will let you know for sure. Awesome job.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, hi Rene. Yeah, I'm there actually. I'm just checking.
Okay,
yeah, hi. I heard, but I'm checking with Sanjeev for the.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, hello.
Perfect. So I've got the link again for the survey for anyone still around with us. Just a comment, remember to complete the survey. There's a chance that you can win something. Most obviously, if anyone still has any question, want to ask something, say anything, or want to provide any kind of feedback, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself now. Basically, it's open mic right now. Feel free to unmute yourself and say anything you want, basically.
A quick maybe one. So it is for first time for me for such a virtual travel, and I really enjoy the whole event. Wonder how the remaining guys, which are still here, what are your thoughts?
And here we are talking about Power Platform. If this isn't love, I'm not terribly sure what else it is, you know. So a sincere thanks to all the people, especially the community people, for coming in and listening to the wonderful sessions. A huge thanks to all the speakers. I see David here. Hi, David. Terribly sorry. I'll probably call you one of these days and say hi. But a huge thanks to all our speakers for making it a fantastic event. I see Pauline here as well. Pauline, hi. And thank you very much, ma'am, for gracing us and for inspiring us. And in general, you know, I just have to say a huge thanks to Golaknath and Rene. Rene for all the guidance, Golak for corralling all of us, getting us together, conducting today in the absence of, right, some help from my side. And then finally, folks, I just cannot say enough, thanking Microsoft enough for this, to be able to win the hearts and minds of so many people. And, I'm speaking on behalf of all the users, like it could be non-IT engineers, it could be scientists, it could be housewives, it could be anybody, to be able to create, to bring our ideas to bear, right? To bring our ideas to bear and on our terms, it is remarkable, it is just stunning as to what we can actually create. So we doff our hat to Mr. Charles Lamana and his team for being able to, give us this incredible thing called Power Platform, And with this, and if you guys want to add something, I mean, this is heartfelt. I turned 50 this year, but if you look at some of my posts, it's actually for people who are 15, in their, going to grad study, maybe. It reminds me of that. It's brought out the engineer roaring back, for almost 10 years. I was on the business side, 15 years. It has brought the engineer in me roaring back over the past few years, and a huge thanks to my friend here, people like Rene, people like Golak, who have helped me from a community side as well. Okay, with this, just wanted to thank you, and I'll hand it back to Rene and Golak. Thank you very much, folk, to everyone.
Yeah, hi
Cheers.
everyone. So I'm just requesting actually if whoever can turn on their camera so that at least we can take a snap in gallery mode. I can see 3 photos actually. Okay, let me share my screen. I can see 3 images only. You can see. Oh, I have not turned on mine. Mine is on. So I can see 4 images. Maybe I'll go back a bit.